For almost 150 years, one empire rose from the Deccan Hills to challenge not one, but two massive powers, first the Mughals and then the British. This is an incredible story of guerrilla tactics, revolutionary government, and a legacy of pure defiance. So let's get into it and explore the epic rise and fall of the Maratha Empire.
144 years. Now that might not sound like a huge amount of time in the grand scheme of things, but in that period from 1674 all the way to 1818, this empire would completely reshape the map and really the very soul of the Indian subcontinent. I mean, their entire story is really defined by conflict. First, they rose up to defy the Mughal Empire, which seemed absolutely invincible at the time. But after they broke that power, they came face to face with a totally new kind of challenger from across the seas, the British East India Company. It's this incredible tale of an empire forged in the fire of not one, but two epic showdowns.
All right, so where does this all begin? Well, every great story needs a hero, right? And for the Marathas, that hero was Chhatrapati Shivaji Maharaj. He's the visionary who laid the entire foundation for the empire, and he started with almost nothing. Just think about that for a second. We're in an era dominated by the colossal Mughal Empire, and Shivaji's ambition starts with this tiny piece of family land, a Jagiir near Pune. It's the classic underdog story right from the get-go.
But Shivaji was an absolute master of guerrilla warfare and strategy. He started small, capturing key forts one by one. His victory at Pratapgarh was a total shock to the system for the big players. And even when the mighty Mughal Emperor Aurangzeb sent his best general and forced him to surrender 23 forts, well, that was just a temporary setback. This guy knew how to play the long game.
Okay, now this is the moment. After years and years of fighting, Shivaji's coronation was way more than just a ceremony. This was a massive political statement. By crowning himself Chhatrapati, he was officially declaring his kingdom was sovereign and totally independent from Mughal rule. The Maratha kingdom was officially on the map.
And this is what shows you that Shivaji was so much more than just a brilliant general. He was a real nation builder. He created something called the Ashtapradhan, a council of 8 ministers to actually run his government. Think about it. In an age where everything was about who your father was, he appointed people based on their skill, not their bloodline. This merit-based system became the efficient, stable foundation of the new Maratha state. So after Shivaji, the empire enters this whole new phase, a really explosive phase of growth. The center of power actually shifted from the king to the prime minister, the Peshwa, and this one change just unleashed the Marathas across the entire subcontinent. So how'd they do it? The blueprint was pretty simple, but it was incredibly effective. Power was centralized under the Peshwa. He then created a system of sardars, these powerful regional commanders. Basically, these commanders were given the green light to lead expeditions and govern new territories, which allowed for this incredibly fast, decentralized expansion. And wow, the results were just staggering. The Marathas swept across India, taking over places like Malwa and Gujarat. Then, in 1737, they pulled off what was basically unthinkable. They raided Delhi, the very heart of the Mughal Empire. This was a devastating blow to Mughal prestige. By 1760, their territory stretched from the north all the way down to the south, coast to coast. Let's just be really clear about this. By the middle of the 18th century, the Maratha Confederacy was, without a doubt, the #1 power in India. They had effectively replaced the Mughals as the subcontinent's central authority. But you know how it goes. History has these turning points, these single, catastrophic events. And for the Marathas, that event was a battle fought on the dusty plains of Panipat. It was a clash that would stop their momentum cold. And you gotta ask, right? At the absolute peak of their power, who could possibly stop them? They seemed totally unstoppable, a force that had conquered pretty much everything in its path. Who could even stand in their way? Well, the answer came from the northwest. An invading Afghan army, led by Ahmad Shah Durrani, was coming down, imposing a direct threat. So the Marathas marched north under their commander, Sadashiv Rao Bau, to meet this challenge head-on. And this confrontation would become the Third Battle of Panipat. The outcome was an absolute catastrophe. On a single day in January 1761, superior Afghan tactics and firepower just decimated the Maratha army. We're talking an estimated 40,000 Maratha soldiers killed, It was a military and psychological blow from which the empire would never, ever truly recover.
So, what happens after a disaster like Panipat? Well, it completely shatters the Marathas' central authority. The empire starts to fragment, with all those regional commanders becoming more and more independent. And this division, this fragmentation, creates the perfect power vacuum. And you know who is waiting in the wings, ready to fill it? The British East India Company. And that brings us to the final chapter. The fall of the empire wasn't a single event. It was more like a slow bleeding out over 3 major wars, with the rising British power, what we now call the Anglo-Maratha Wars.
It really was a 3-act tragedy. The first war? Kind of a stalemate, but it proved the British could hang with them. The second war? That was a huge, decisive victory for the British, and it cost the Marathas their northern territories. And the third and final war? Well, that was it. The Peshwas surrendered, and by 1818, the Maratha Empire was over.
So, the empire is gone. But its legacy? Oh, that is woven right into the fabric of modern India. So why do we still talk about them today? Why does this story still matter so much? Well, for starters, the Marathas created the first truly pan-Indian political structure after the Mughals, and they pioneered some really sophisticated military and administrative systems. But maybe their biggest legacy, the one that really echoes through time, was their role as a symbol of resistance. Their long fight against foreign rule would directly inspire the freedom fighters who, a century later, would fight for India's ultimate independence.
And all of this leaves us with this huge what-if question, doesn't it? If the Marathas hadn't been shattered at Panipat, if they had somehow stayed united, could they have actually stopped the British tide? Could the entire history of India have gone down a completely different path? That's a pretty powerful thought to leave you with.